let's be honest, 2020 was a terrible year. Almost nothing went right. But the one silver lining in everything that has gone wrong has been everything that's gone right for the U.S. men's national team. This is Stars and Strikes, the road to Qatar 2022. Yeah, everyone, welcome to the Stars and Strikes 2020 recap episode from the Crib Studios. I mean, I look like Two-Face right now. This lighting sucks. I'm on a couch in my living room. Jersey's hanging on a window. Ryan, you got deodorant in the trophy cabinet right there behind you.
I had to flex on you.
Had to flex just a little bit.
Yeah, from the youth playing days. Chuck FC,
oh, yeah.
If you're listening, shout out to Chuck.
Legend. But yeah, no, like you said, we've had a great year if you're just focusing on the national team perspective. I mean, I don't think, at least in my lifetime and in my knowledge of the history of the men's national team, we've never had a generation of young players coming through that are succeeding at this high of a stage. We don't just have players that are coming through and excelling the 2020 of intros right there, but excelling at the highest level of MLS. We have guys doing it in Europe, in the Champions League, in the Premier League, and that's never been done before with the amount of players that we have doing it.
Yeah, and it's not like in years past when we have a bunch of guys that may be great, that may have the potential to cut it out on the big stage, being the World Cup. We have so many guys that have emerged this year that seem to have the probability to waltz into our starting 11 and change our team for the better. I mean, just to mention a few, Giovanni Reyna, Musa, guys like that, they are guys that we could take into 2022, 2026, knowing that they have quality to them. There's not a doubt really to them, although they're young, but these are guys that have the potential to make our team great.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there's so many new players coming in. And in the past, it's almost been like you have to mess up or not be playing well for some of our national team stalwarts to not get in the squad. Now you have to earn your spot in that squad every single time you go. For every single call-up, you have to earn your way in. If you're not playing well at the club level, I don't care who you are. You're not getting into the squad. If you're not performing, if you're not in form, you're not going to get in the team. So I think that's only going to bring a positive impact to the team and create a bigger level of competitiveness in camp and practices and training and everything that they do to try and be one of those 11 players that walk out representing the crest.
Yeah, exactly. We finally have that luxury of being able to pick and choose players. We don't have to settle for anyone. I know we had that rant about Darlington Nagbe last episode because he's one of those players I was kind of counting on there to be always an opportunity to break into this team. He thought he could pick and choose a chance to play. But now we have this beautiful, batch of players where even if we're out Pulisic, say one of our biggest names, we still have quality backups to replace him. So there's never really a doubt in most of our positions on the field that we have quality now. I mean, we have, like a lot of European powerhouse sides, we have quite the batch of players now to choose from, and it all seems to have started in 2020. This seems to be the year where I don't know if it's something to do with the academies or just finally how MLS clubs are operating with clubs abroad now. But it seems like this has been finally the year where the gears are starting to turn, and our domestic operation of growing players and developing young players is finally starting to look like it's been working.
Yeah, and you're talking about the emergence of young and new players, none bigger than the two guys we're going to start with, Giovanni Reyna and Sergiño Dest. The emergence of these two guys in 2020 has been absolutely spectacular. I mean, you look at a guy like Gio Reyna, who's now an everyday starter for Dortmund. A year ago today, who's Gio Reyna? I mean, we knew of him really. He's like, oh, he's this young guy. He's playing for Dortmund's academy. He's starting to get some first-team opportunities. But now it's like he's one of the most important players. And you got a guy like Sergiño Dest, who was playing for Ajax and starting to break through there. Now he's starting every week for Barcelona. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this has never happened in the history of the national team that we have two players playing for Barcelona, and it's incredible.
Yeah, and for players like, especially like Reina, and it seemed like almost a dream, because we saw him at the start, and we knew he got minutes here and there, like maybe like 12, 16 minutes here and there, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the 2019 season, as we got into 2020, it seemed like he emerged as even more of a powerhouse player, and now he's getting minutes week in, week out. He's one of their main guys, and it seems like a dream how so many of these players not only are just breaking in, but they're reaching the top level. And I mean, we talk about Serginho as well. And when he announced that he was choosing us to play with, I remember just being like beyond hype. I mean, at the time he was an Ajax player, and even then, having an Ajax player announce that he wanted to play for the United States men's national team over the Dutch, it's awesome. And that was even before knowing anything about his Barcelona transfer, and the lengths that he would go so early on in his career to be playing alongside Lionel Messi, to be assisting Lionel Messi, and doing just beyond anyone's expectations. These things both of these young guys are doing, and that's what I'm hoping more so of from De La Fuente from in the future, at least. Because he's already at Barcelona, but we haven't seen fully that breakthrough from him. He's kind of, De La Fuente, it seems like he's in that position where Reina was last year, where we hear his name, we know his face, but he's yet to break through. And Reina showed that you know, even if you're just some young guy from America, you have the quality to break into some of Europe's top teams. So I really want to hope, I mean, when we get to our hopes for 2021, that'll be more to talk about then. But yeah, just a great year from just some of these young guys emerging.
Yeah, let's talk about Gio Reyna real quick. I mean, obviously, we all know the history of his dad, former U.S. men's national team captain, Claudio Reyna, one of the best players to ever wear the red, white, and blue. I mean, Gio's got all the talent to not only surpass him, but go to the very, very top. I mean, you look at this kid, he just turned 18, and to have the calmness on the ball that he has, the composure in front of goal, to be able to set up players. I mean, the goal he scored a couple weeks ago, the little dink. I know Dortmund lost 5-1. Was it Augsburg, I believe it was against, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Augsburg. He gets the ball behind, little dink right over the goalkeeper for a goal. I mean, the quality and the composure, I think, for me, are what really stand out. You know, all players, when they emerge, you always see, you know, the tricks and the flicks, and they're doing all these different things. Gio Reyna can do that, but it almost seems like no stage is too big for him.
Yeah, and it was funny, because I feel like in one of our earlier episodes, we were talking about Gio Reyna earlier, and we were talking about, oh, when this new season starts, he's going to have to, you know, step it up, especially if Jadon Sancho is staying at Dortmund. Like, there's, you know, he's going to have to fight against Brandt, against Hazard, against Sancho for minutes. And it turns out that those are the guys that are now fighting for minutes because of that quality, and just that ability that he has, just the calmness, the composure, the professionalism from such a young guy, to just be so, you know, head down and focused on the game, and get what's done across the line. It seems like now he's looking like one of their starting guys, which I never would have expected him to be in that position. Although I hoped for him to be in that position, like we talked about, I think in one of our earlier episodes, but I just could have never seen this coming.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned is him starting pretty much every game and forcing his way into that team. And what happened was, when he first broke through this year, every single time he's on the pitch, he makes something happen. He's dangerous, whether it's crossing the ball, laying a pass on, just all these different little things, getting a shot from distance, being the creative force. He's always making something happen in positivity for Dortmund. When things have gone wrong for them in the Champions League, I mean, look at the last game against Zenit. They bring him on before Jadon Sancho. He comes on, they win the game. These things just aren't a coincidence, and they start building and building and building. And then you really start to see this big picture that he's the guy really pulling the strings for Dortmund right now. I mean, his ability to just play the perfectly weighted pass in behind for guys like Erling Haaland. It's incredible, especially at such a young age. He literally just turned 18. He made his national team debut right before his birthday, scoring his first goal off that nice little free kick. And to have a player like this coming up with all these other young guys, he seems to be the pick of the bunch coming up right now. And we're not even talking about Christian Pulisic. Like, Christian Pulisic is still in his early 20s. Like, he's not an old guy by any means, but he's just been around for so long because he's been the guy since he was 18 years old.
And moving on to like another player that we just mentioned vaguely, but Serginho Dest, this has been a huge year for him. I mentioned him being at Ajax, moving to Barcelona, but just that player is so crazy to have playing for the United States men's national team, because it's almost like we've never had a player like this before. We have a guy like with flair, with skills, with tricks that's coming down the right-hand side, left-hand side, even whichever one he wants to play on. He's so versatile on whichever side we want him on, which gives way for players like Cannon, like Anthony Robinson too. But just his versatility and his sheer quality on both flanks is something that we've never had before, really skill-wise. It almost seems like he shouldn't be playing for the United States, because he's
that filthy. He's that good.
He's that good. Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. When in the summer, early in our episodes, I think I remember us talking about when the rumors first came out that he was either going to go to Barcelona or Bayern. We were like a little bit taken back, being like, you know what? Is that the right move for him? Is he going to be able to carve out consistent minutes and get to a spot right there? Is he going to be able to cope with the pressure of playing for one of the biggest clubs in the world at such a young age? Or is it just going to actually hinder his development as a player? Would it be better for him to stay at Ajax another year or two and really excel and become a better player, playing week in and week out, and granted a lower league, but still the minutes and getting all those play time would, add up? And we were like, maybe that's not the right move, but it's also so exciting to see. So it's a little bit of a back and forth type thing. He eventually goes to Barcelona, and since he's got there, he showed that he belongs at the very top.
Yeah, he's in fact, he's been one of their like most trusted players amongst the like Barcelona faithful. Even, I mean, they've had obviously a pretty poor season up to their usual standards, but it seems like from a lot of what I'm hearing around the Barcelona camp is that Serginho Dest is one of the brightest aspects of otherwise a pretty poor season from Barcelona, and that's something special, because as you have to assume, if Barcelona goes on and has to, structure a rebuild, especially with Messi on the way out, potentially on the way out. I don't want to be quoted on anything. I'm no transfer news source here, but with Messi potentially on the way out, Barcelona is looking at a pretty hefty rebuild. And for Serginho Dest to be one of those trusted guys, one of those guys that the fans are behind, one of those guys that the players and the manager is behind, that just means that he's going to be around for this rebuild, and that he is included in this rebuild. They're going to be buying, center backs, midfielders, attackers, but what's to stay is Serginho Dest, American left back, American right back, and that just means that he has all the more time to be at the highest level. I mean, there's always question, if you're at the highest level, there's always question as to if you can keep it up, if you're cut out for this. There's never an opportunity for you to really let down your guard. But seeing how everybody's taken to Serginho Dest at Barcelona, it's just all the more comforting to know that this is a quality player at a huge club, and it seems like he's the right guy for that position at Barcelona.
Yeah, he seems to fit exactly what Barcelona want out of their fullback. He's an attacking fullback. He can literally do everything you want an attacking fullback to do. He's good at playing the ball. He's a good crosser. The filth, the skills and tricks you mentioned before, I mean, we saw him when he was playing with the national team. It's like he's on a different level with that stuff. He can dribble by 3 defenders and slot the ball across the 6-yard box for an easy tap-in. We've seen him do it. He scored his first goal for Barcelona. He's putting in performances in the Champions League. I mean, we saw a guy who we're going to talk about a little later. We saw 2 Americans matched up and being 2 of the best players on the field in the Champions League. Who would have thought a year ago today?
Yeah,
I mean,
seriously. We always had, I mean, let's just hop right into another player here. I mean, we've always had this guy around for the past few years, and he was kind of our crown jewel. And now just the fact that we're talking about other players apart from Christian Pulisic, our Captain
Golden
America.
boy.
Yeah, and it's we're talking about other players now. Poor Christian, man, he's got to share the spotlight. But that doesn't mean that he hasn't had a phenomenal year as well. Fighting his injuries, even he's come back, he's fought. I mean, he showed great professionalism and great determination to come back after multiple injuries. He's had an adductor tear in January and a hamstring injury at the start of the 2020-2021 season, and after both of those, he's come back fighting, and when he's come back from both, he's put in performances, especially like we're going to talk about after that lockdown period.
Yeah, you mentioned after the lockdown period, he was arguably the best player in the Premier League. I genuinely think he probably was. I mean, you're talking about the things he was doing, the goals he was scoring, the impact he was having for Chelsea. We talked a lot about this at the beginning of our show. He was so dynamic. I mean, you saw him scoring goals that won the Premier League for Liverpool. We saw him dribbling by 3 world-class defenders and slotting a ball home against the champions, against Liverpool, to Tammy Abraham. And the things he can do are second to none in our national team player pool. We kind of forget about him because of these injury issues that he's had and, all the other young players coming up. But let's be honest about something. Our best player right now, when everyone is healthy, is Christian Pulisic. And honestly, it's probably not really close. I love Gio Reyna. I love Weston McKennie, and the stuff that they can do is phenomenal. But in terms of pure ability, Christian is second to none in this player pool at the moment.
Yeah, and the thing is, there was a lot of talk about Christian prior to this year as to if he was the guy to take over after Eden Hazard left for Real Madrid. And obviously, with his 2 injuries, we haven't been able to see as much of him as we were able to a couple seasons ago, or at least at the start of last season. But after he came back in that lockdown period, like you mentioned, that was the brightest we've ever seen from Christian, I think. And I agree. I think he was hands down probably the best player in the Premier League for that moment. And he is for sure, undoubtedly, the only reason that Chelsea was able to secure a Champions League position, because they were kind of on the decline prior to lockdown, and then Christian returns almost as their boy wonder too. As he is ours, he is also Chelsea's, because he pushed them towards 4th place to finish in that season, when, I mean, in a crunching battle between United and Leicester City, and Christian showed he got all the guts to take over from Eden Hazard and be that guy on the wing, that creative player, that clinical player that could bring Chelsea into the position that they need to be as one of the biggest clubs in London.
Yeah, you mentioned him taking over that number 10 jersey, the one previously worn by one of the great players in the world that we have, despite his lack of fortune over at Real Madrid, particularly right in the belly area. But but yeah, that's the type of player that Christian can become. And the biggest setback for him has always just been injuries. I mean, you mentioned the tear in his adductor, and then the hamstring injury in the FA Cup final. Like, he's scoring a goal in the FA Cup final. He's Chelsea's best player. We're watching it, and it's like, oh my gosh, we have a player scoring a goal in the FA Cup final. It's awesome. Like, just kind of how, like, this year's gone for, U.S. soccer fans. Like, we have this. We have a guy scoring a goal in the FA Cup final. Christian's playing phenomenal, and you can just see the grimace on his face when he pulled his hamstring. And it's really hamstringed his start to the new season. And he's been in and out of the team. He hasn't quite been able to get a consistent run of games due to fitness. But when he has been fit and he has been playing, I think it's evident that he's their most influential player, especially when it comes to end product. Chelsea spent a ton of money. They brought in the likes of Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, Hakim Ziyech, and Christian is the guy that, when he's fit, is the guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see Chelsea fans on Twitter all the time, especially because they're having their issues again this season. I see Chelsea fans on Twitter demanding the front 3 of Pulisic, Giroud and Hudson-Odoi. None of which are those new signings that you just mentioned. I mean, those where Timo Werner has struggled, where Ziyech is also injured and not being able to perform there. Christian is the guy that the Chelsea fans want in the squad because he does have that
The it
ability.
factor.
Yeah, exactly. And he's where these other players are struggling, Christian is the guy that is reliable for them. And they, even though he hasn't had the best season thus far, a lot of that I think has to come down to Frank Lampard not using his players properly. And that's why you're having these Chelsea fan uproars. They want the best out of our American guy.
I believe in our first episode, I called this move the biggest American blockbuster of the summer because with COVID, we couldn't go see movies and stuff. But Weston McKennie to Juventus, I think, has turned out better than any of us could ever have imagined. It was a loan with the option to buy. And I think for now, I would be absolutely stunned. I'm pretty sure it's 100%. I'd say even more so than 100% that Juventus are going to make that move permanent because since Weston's gotten to Turin, he's been absolutely sensational.
Yeah, and you have to compare his transfer to the other midfielder that Juventus bought, Arthur, for 75 million pounds, I think it was, or something, or euros. Yeah, they're not
Plus
a British
Pjanic.
club. Yeah, and you have to ask who's had the greater impact on Juventus, and it's undoubtedly Weston McKennie. He has transformed Juventus into the team that Pirlo is wanting them to operate as. He's become a pivotal part of the system that Pirlo's trying to operate, and he's been effective at it. He's
Like you said, Weston has taken his game to a whole nother level since he's moved over to Juventus, training week in and week out, day in and day out with the best players in the world, playing along the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo. He has elevated himself to a level I don't think we expected. We knew that he was going to take his game, and improve as a player, but to the extent that he's done it, to scoring scissor kicks in the Champions League, I don't think we were really expecting that. We always knew he was the guy that would give 110% all the time, all action midfielder, be all over the pitch, but his skills and technical ability has taken just a jump. And I think his tactical awareness under Pirlo and playing alongside these great players has also taken a jump.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly why 2020 has been so great for him. It's because it's finally combining that skill, that ability that we knew this guy has, just that sheer just athleticism as well, and it's combined that with technical awareness. And when you combine those two, I think that's exactly what players like Ronaldo, the best players in the world have. They're able to hone their skills, their ability into the system that their manager is wanting them to play. I mean, we see the opposite so often too, where players have the talent, have the skills, but they're not able to get it out of themselves tactically. And it's so great to see that McKennie, in this example, is flourishing at Juventus. It's I mean, especially comparing him to Arthur, their other transfer. So it's great to see. And I know we talk about this guy a lot, so we could keep rolling, but man, what a year it's been for Weston McKennie.
I mean, and we'll talk about the goal a little later too, and we discussed it a lot in our last episode, but I can't think of a better goal in terms of just purely the goal itself and what he had to do in the history of, the U.S. over in Europe. That scissor kick goal, I mean, I could just watch it all day. It is a thing of beauty.
And I think you and I probably talk about this goal maybe once a week, just because this is going to be something that we probably remember for the rest of our lives, just because of the impact on American football in general. This is just one of the best moments for me. At least I can say that. Just I remember having both screens open. One was the United game where Tyler Adams was playing against Manchester United, and then one was Weston McKennie, and probably the biggest matchup in world football right now, Barcelona versus Juventus, probably the two biggest teams if you take maybe Bayern Munich out of the equation.
Whoa. There's a team in red that I think has a little bit of an argument for that. The current world champions and the current English champions that have have an argument for that
Oh
one.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I do see what you're saying. We had two Americans playing in that game too. You had
yeah.
Serge and Weston.
Yeah, and I just think that even apart from that goal, that was just such a monumental thing for the United States men's national team to have these two players on this occasion. Um, and I just think that's going to be something that we look back to 2020 to for the rest of our lives even, and say like, man, we've come a long way.
Speaking of a goal for the rest of our lives, I want to talk about one that wasn't quite the technical, appealing goal and just being like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a goal like that type of reaction, but a goal on a stage that an American's never scored before. Tyler Adams, 88th minute, Champions League quarterfinals, scores a goal against Atletico Madrid to give Leipzig the 2-1 victory. There's never been a U.S. men's national team player that scored a goal of that magnitude in that competition.
Yeah, and that's another thing. We could look back at all these moments now. I mean, we know that Landon Donovan, Clint Dempsey, they all have their moments, and these are just these young kids at the start of their career, already having these blockbuster moments. I mean, if you look at a player, I mean, the most extreme examples would be Messi and Ronaldo, and how many goals like this, like Tyler Adams is scoring. How many goals have Messi and Ronaldo scored on those same terms? And now we have Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, young guys who are doing this at the early on in their careers. So it's easy to say. I mean, what's next for them if they're doing such great things early on in their career, just such memorable, impactful moments. It's we could just keep going on and on, but 2020 really is the start of just hopefully just great things. And Tyler Adams doesn't start always. He's in a battle for dense midfield depth at Leipzig, but he's gotten minutes, and I think that goal in the quarterfinal just goes to show to the manager and the fans as well that he does have his qualities, and I think the fans are behind him, and the manager staff as well. But I think it's just a matter of a lot of depth at that team, and he's bound to get more. But still a great year for him.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's always seemed like it's been a bit of a roller coaster year for not Weston McKennie, for Tyler Adams, and it's just he's been injured in and out of the team. He struggled with injuries similar to Christian. However, he hasn't quite broken completely into that Leipzig team where he's a week in, week out starter every single game. In the biggest games, he'll start. He seems to always play in those games, whether it's coming off the bench or starting, but he hasn't quite established himself as one of the pillars of that team. And with all the injuries, I feel like the injuries for him have set him back from doing that. And hopefully in 2021, he can take that next step and be fit, because I do think if he's fit and he gets an extended run of game time, he's going to show the quality that he has, and he'll be able to, solidify his spot in the team.
Yeah, and look, it's not as easy for a guy like Tyler Adams to break back into a team after being injured. If you're a defensive midfielder, you don't really get the opportunities like Pulisic coming back from injury to bang in goals and say, look guys, I'm back on the field, and I'm going to be here starting every game from now on. It's not as easy for a defensive midfielder to have that kind of impact. So it's been rough after injury, just being a part of that midfield battle for minutes. Hasn't always gone his way, but just seeing that he is still part of the equation, and obviously scoring goals like that in the quarterfinal, people know his quality and that he's there, and so there's a lot of hopeful things to think about when it comes to Tyler Adams still. I mean, maybe not his perfect year stellar wise because of the injuries, but not a bad year at all.
Brendan Aronson is a guy that had an amazing 2020. MLS best 11 player, 4 goals and 5 assists this past season. And he just completed his move to RB Salzburg over in Austria, joining up with Jesse Marsch, the American manager over there for the Red Bull club. And he is a player that I think can really take the next step in 2021.
Yeah, and he's had some great contributions to the Philadelphia Union side, which we know in MLS was one of the standout teams just because of their principles, their principles lying within the academy, just breaking through against other teams that we wouldn't have expected the Union to be this powerful this season, and a lot of it is due credit to Brendan Aronson, a young guy, but thoroughly deserved that move to Europe because of just how impactful he was. Even if he's not throwing out Bruno Fernandes type numbers, goals and assist wise, 10 goals and assists, 10 goal contributions this season is great from a player his age, and more so than that, he's gotten almost every minute for the Union on their charge through the playoffs, and getting that supporter shield. So that experience is going to be great for him. But I think 2020 is just the start for this guy too. That was just the prologue.
Yeah, and you mentioned guys going over to Europe. Like, we haven't even mentioned guys like Josh Sargent, who haven't quite hit the heights and, the things that we would have liked from a player, of his talent. But he's starting to get his feet wet and really start to establish himself as a player at the top level. I think Brendan Aronson might have a little bit of a quicker start to them, yet he's going over at a bit of an older age, but he's also linking it with Jesse Marsch. That's going to be huge because Jesse Marsch isn't going to be afraid to give him opportunities if he earns them, which I think he will. We've seen Brendan Aronson, the type of hard worker he is, especially on the pitch. I think it's going to be a great move for him, and I can't wait to see how he develops and what he can do for the national team, because we don't really have a midfielder at this current stage of his skill set outside of him. We have the likes of, we've always had Michael Bradley, who's now at this stage more of a defensive midfielder. You have Tyler Adams, who's also more of a defensive. Weston McKennie, a box-to-box. Yunus Musa, a guy we'll talk about a little bit. He's emerged. He's a box-to-box athletic guy. Brendan Aronson is a true number 10. And I think he can carve out a role for himself within the team and really kick on as a player in this world.
Yeah, and you mentioned Jesse Marsch. I think it's great to have that manager who is so familiar with the player and is going to give that player the proper justice that he deserves, because he wants to develop a fellow American abroad. So I think that's going to be a great opportunity with him, and I hope that he kind of gets molded well into the Salzburg team, into the position that benefits him most. And it's also up to Berhalter to also put him into that position, a different manager, but to put him, to mold him into that proper number 10, like you said, we need. So, this year has been huge for him just because of, his great season with the MLS. He got his first cap with the national team against Costa Rica, his first start, and then his second start with us against El Salvador too. So, he's breaking in with the national team.
Scored his first goal, had an assist. I think he was one of our best players in the day.
For sure.
One of our best players in the day.
And now he's off to Europe, just getting this new chapter started. So let's do it. Let's roll.
Yeah, we'll have to see how long it takes for him to get that first, run of games, because it is going to take him a little bit of time to adjust. He just came off a season with MLS, so he's not quite at the same fitness standards of the rest of the guys in the Salzburg team. So it's definitely going to take him some time before we really start seeing him get minutes for RB Salzburg. Oh my gosh, that was terrible. But like I said, it's gonna take some time before we see him do that. A guy that I want to talk about real quick, he wasn't even on our agenda, and I can't believe we forgot to put him on there. Tim Weah. What a dynamite end to 2020 he had. He was off injured at the beginning of the year. We weren't seeing him much. He was struggling really to get into the team. He's still just trying to recover from all those injuries that he had building up. We saw him in that camp in the fall with the rest of the European boys, and he kind of looked a little bit lively when he came on the field off the bench. And then all of a sudden, after that, he just kicked on, scoring goal after goal, scoring absolute beauties, scoring goals with his left foot, screamers, little cool, calm, collected dinks. I mean, he arguably probably had the best December of any player in the player pool.
Yeah, and he is arguably, too, the player that needed the best December out of all of our player pool, because, he's struggled in his career, and he's still a young guy, but he definitely needed that confidence boost. And, we're only a third of the way through the season. in France, and Lille is in a great position in league. So surely he's going to be called upon more, and if he keeps that form up, he's just another one of those guys that is just on the rise for us. And it's I think he's probably one of our most exciting ones, especially amongst, like, United States men's national team fans. Is like, we want to see this guy kick on. So that's why this December was so exciting for us, because, just not even just the amount of goals and assists he got, but
The variety.
the stage, the variety, and just the skills that were called upon from him. It's good to see that he has that still in him after being out for so long, and now he's just ready to kick on with that confidence boost. There's undoubtedly, hopefully at least, big things are coming still. This is just another kickstart after the injury. That one goal against, who was it? That late minute winner.
The screamer, the outside the box.
Oh my gosh!
That was a beautiful goal.
We love to see it.
Yeah. I don't know if there was a month where in history where we've had that many screamers. You had Gio Reyna's little dink. You had Timothy Weah's screamer outside the box, and you had Weston McKennie's scissor kick, all in the matter of weeks. And hey, I think Tim Weah is a guy that we definitely can see really, really start to kick on in 2021, because he had that big move over to Lille, and since he's been there, he hasn't quite really been able to get enough game time because of all of his injuries and form to really show and develop into the player that we all see he can be. Because the talent is there. Like we said, just in the last month, the goals that he scored, the variety, he's scoring screamers, he's scoring goals with his left foot, and he's also able to stay cool, calm, and collected, and do outside of the right foot, and just calmly pass the ball past the goalkeeper, as time is expiring late in the game. And like I said, he's a player of a type that we don't necessarily have in this team. We don't really have a guy that's an absolute burner that can get in the behind the defense and really cause issues for a back line in our team right now.
Yeah, it's definitely a variation in, assuming he plays that striker, he's a variation in player from Sargent, from Altidore, and he's just giving us all the more options to play in a different way. So when we move in to talk about the national team this year, I think that's definitely something that we lacked in some of our games, players of different dynamics at the number 9 spot.
We're going to get into a bit of a big picture conversation to close out part 1 of our 2020 recap. And we're going to start off with talking about just the team as a whole. We didn't play a ton of matches because of the pandemic. CONCACAF was one of the last federations to really get going after the restart. 3-0-1 this year. That's 3 wins, no losses, and a draw. We started the year off before the pandemic hit with a 1-0 victory in LA over Costa Rica. That was the game where Uli Yanez scored the nice little penalty. Guys like Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie got their first introductions to the national team in that one. We came back after the pandemic hit, and we really started to get football rolling once again. And with the November camp, that's where all the European boys really got introduced. Gio Reyna scored his first goal. We had a 0-0 draw against Wales and a 6-2 hammering of Panama. That game was also played over in Europe. And then we came back with a little bit of a surprise with a domestic camp and a victory over El Salvador to finish the year.
Yeah, and like you said, we haven't really seen the team together a lot this year, and which has been somewhat disappointing. But when we have seen them, it's been great. Like we have only had the 1 draw, otherwise wins all around. But like we've been talking about all episode for this lengthy amount of episode time, but we've been talking about those guys, the golden generation of guys that are playing abroad, that are playing at home. And that's the biggest takeaway from this year, is that Greg looks like he's finally assembling this group that has the quality to go forward into these big competitions coming up. And even, a lot of the guys that we haven't mentioned, it's just it looks like we have a team that we're not struggling to throw together. It's like we have players in designated positions that are solidified there for the big games. We can almost put together you know, an ideal starting 11 that wouldn't cause many arguments. We have this golden generation that Greg's putting together. The puzzle pieces are looking to be in place, starting in 2020. That's come together, regardless of if the camps have actually been together or not. The minutes, the playtime, performances at the club level have been really what's telling this year, if anything.
Yeah, and I want to talk about a guy that just absolutely came out of nowhere. We didn't really have, and he was not on anyone's radar. Yunus Musa. He is playing for England's youth setup. He gets called into the November camp. He gets the start in both matches, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, we have a midfield three that we can go forward with that everyone is really excited about. Musa hasn't even completely committed to the U.S. right now. He's only played in friendly, so he's not completely cap tied to us 100% yet. But Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie, and Yunus Musa look like a midfield three and a dynamic midfield three. Go check out our previous content if you want to find us talk all about that and the dynamics and how the three of them play together and just mesh together so well, so quickly. We talked a ton about that during those two games back in November, but he came out of nowhere, and it's looking like he's one of the guys that is going to be a centerpiece of our national team setup going forward.
Yeah, and even apart from that, players like Sebastian Soto, Giacchini, Conrad De La Fuente, it's like we have a lot of options now. This was a breakthrough year for a lot of players like that. And Soto and Giacchini, two names that I just mentioned, are players in the number 9 spot, a position that we've talked about a lot as where we don't have someone to play. And we talked about Tim Weah earlier, and now we just have so many different options as puzzle pieces where we normally wouldn't. It was always a matter of every single time that we had a big tournament coming up, it seemed like it was a matter of settling for players and pulling together this team, this kind of team of misfits that might work. And now we have different puzzle pieces for different scenarios that we know is quality either way we go. If we want a number 9, a powerful number 9 in the center, quality in the air, quality on the ball at his feet, we could go with Soto. If we want the pace behind breaking through defensive lines, we could go with Tim Weah. We even have Altidore still. So it's just a matter of, Greg is finally has what looks like to be all the puzzle pieces for a varying amount of puzzles that he could put together. And if this year has brought us anything, it's all these players coming to the forefront. So we're finally. It seems like we're finally done searching for what seems to have been an endless search of quality.
Yeah, and like you said, we kind of have this ideal team that we can think of and all these guys that we can do. But when you have that ideal team, you can be like, oh, we got Yunus Musa, but wait, we got Brendan Aronson that can also play that role. Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams. What about Michael Bradley? Michael Bradley's still around. He's still going to be fighting like hell to keep a part in this team. Even right back, left back, we've got Serginho Dest, we got Anthony Robinson. Whoa, hold on. DeAndre Yedlin just had an absolutely phenomenal game against the reigning English champions Liverpool. He was absolutely sensational. What about him still? Reggie Cannon breaking through. All these different types of conversations. We have serious depth and competition for spots. And when I look at the team, there are 2 nailed-on starters if everyone is fit. No matter what, there is no up for debate. Zach Steffen's our best goalkeeper. It's not even close. And Christian Pulisic gets in this team somewhere. Other than that, and Weston McKennie. I think Weston McKennie's also.
I was just about to say, you want to have
Weston
a dialogue real quick?
Yeah, I was thinking I misspoke. Weston McKennie's probably that third guy.
3,
that I
yes.
think there's 3. Correction. There's 3 guys that nailed on starters. If in any scenario happens, if everyone is fit, there are 3 guys that I think everyone knows that need to start. But other than that, there is competition. And we have depth behind those guys if they do get hurt. Christian's had his injury issues. But we also have guys like Jordan Morris, Tyler Boyd that can step into these roles, and there's not a huge drop-off.
Mm-hmm. And it's exactly with that drop-off is I think, the most important part, because in years past, it seems like, oh, if we don't have a player in this position, we had to settle for such lesser quality. And, we had an 11 of decently capable players, but if we didn't have someone in that spot, that's when we looked to struggle. It seemed like we went from, a player
Josie Altidore to Aaron Johansson in the World Cup. That is the easiest
perfect
example of that.
Yes. And now, like you mentioned, we have just different options of quality that we could choose from. There's no more, I mean, fingers crossed there's no more of this, but there's no more, pouting around when we can't have our first team starter, because we have other guys with the quality to replace them. So, it's exciting, looking forward. And I know we geek about this almost every episode, because we're obviously fanboys ourselves, but man, it's exciting times.
Thank you guys all for joining us. This was part 1 of our 2020 recap series. This was a bit of the storytelling. We're talking about all the biggest players, the emergence of a golden generation, if you will. Our next part, we still got a ton of awards to hand out, and best goal of the season, player of the year. So we still got a ton of stuff more to talk about. That'll be coming shortly, so make sure to check it out. For Ryan Deeb, I'm Chaz Messman. See you guys.
See you guys.